April 1967. Long Beach, California. Late afternoon. The air inside the civic auditorium is thick with the smell of sweat, canvas mats, and the faint chemical bite of floor polish that never quite disappears, no matter how many tournaments pass through the room. Folding chairs line the perimeter of the training floor. Judges talk quietly near a long table covered with clipboards and paper brackets. Somewhere in the back, a soda machine hums with mechanical patience. Most people in the room are watching the man in the center. Not because he asked them to, because rooms have a way of turning toward gravity. The man's name is Vic Moore, 21 years old, already known across the American karate tournament circuit in a way that only happens when someone wins repeatedly and wins in ways that leave people uncertain about what exactly they just witnessed. He moves like a blade drawn halfway from its sheath. Calm, balanced, dangerous without trying to appear so. 3 trophies sit on the table beside his gym bag, polished metal catching the overhead fluorescent light. First place, first place, first place, first place. 3 tournaments in the last 6 months. The men around him know the story already. They repeat it in pieces while leaning against the wall, arms folded. Fastest hands in the circuit. Knocks people back before they even see it. Point sparring king. They say it with admiration. They also say it with relief. Because none of them have to fight him today. Vic is not smiling. Champions rarely do when the room is full of potential challengers. He stands with one glove tucked into his belt, speaking casually to 2 other competitors, demonstrating a short snapping punch that stops exactly 1 inch from the other man's nose. The room reacts the way rooms always react when someone displays control like that. A few impressed whistles. A low murmur. Someone claps once. Vic shrugs slightly, like the reaction was expected, because for him, it always has been. Across the room near the entrance doors, a smaller man stands quietly beside a stack of folding chairs. Most people have not noticed him yet. He arrived 10 minutes earlier and chose a place where he could see the entire floor without standing in anyone's path. Black hair, dark eyes, compact frame. Bruce Lee. At 26, he is not famous here. Not yet, to most of the competitors gathered inside the Long Beach auditorium. He is simply a Chinese instructor from Oakland who has been invited to demonstrate kung fu concepts during a break in the tournament schedule, which, to the men who have spent years perfecting American tournament karate, sounds vague, possibly theatrical, probably impractical. Bruce stands with his hands relaxed at his sides, watching. He notices everything. The way Vic shifts weight slightly onto his back foot before throwing a punch. The slight tightening of Vic's shoulders when someone stands too close behind him. The rhythm of the room. Noise rising. Noise falling. Energy moving through groups of men the way wind moves through tall grass. Bruce does not interrupt any of it. He simply observes. From across the room, Vic notices him. Not because Bruce draws attention, but because people who dominate rooms develop a sensitivity to unfamiliar gravity. Vic tilts his head slightly. "Who's that?" he asks one of the men beside him. The man glances toward the doors. "Oh, that's the Kung Fu guy." "Kung Fu guy?" "Yeah, Bruce Lee, doing a demo later." Vic studies Bruce from across the distance between them. Small, lean, calm, not wearing a tournament uniform. Just simple training clothes. Vic nods slowly. Something about the stillness bothers him. Not enough to worry, just enough to notice. And in rooms like this, noticing often turns into curiosity. Curiosity turns into testing. Testing turns into something else. But that part hasn't happened yet. Not quite. Bruce remains near the entrance, silent, watching the room breathe. And across the mat, the undefeated champion of the American karate circuit is beginning to wonder why a man half his size looks so completely unconcerned about the hierarchy. Everyone else in the room seems to understand, which is the first small crack in the afternoon. And cracks, once they appear, have a way of spreading. Vic Moore has been winning fights for years, and the thing about winning repeatedly is that it changes the way a man reads a room. Loss teaches caution. Victory teaches something else entirely. By 21, Vic has already fought dozens of competitors across the American tournament circuit. Black belts from Los Angeles, Dallas, Chicago. Men who trained 6 days a week and carried their styles like family names. He beat most of them, sometimes by speed, sometimes by timing, sometimes simply because he refused to give ground, and over time a certain quiet certainty began to settle into him. Not arrogance in the cartoon sense, something subtler. The calm belief that no one in the room could actually hurt him. That belief sits behind his eyes now, as he watches the smaller man near the entrance. Bruce Lee hasn't moved. He's still standing beside the stack of folding chairs, arms relaxed, posture loose in a way that looks almost careless. But Vic notices something unusual. The stillness isn't passive. It's attentive, like someone watching a chessboard rather than a room full of people. Vic looks away first, not because he feels threatened, because curiosity fades quickly when nothing interesting follows it. He turns back to the men beside him and begins demonstrating another technique, this one faster. 3 short punches in succession. Tap, tap, tap. Each stopping just short of the other man's chest. Speed beats strength, Vic says. The sentence lands easily. The room understands that philosophy. Tournament karate rewards the cleanest strike delivered first. Timing, distance, precision, hit without being hit. The judges sitting at the table nod slightly. They've watched Vic win matches exactly this way. Across the room, Bruce notices something else. Vic's punches are fast. Very fast. But the speed comes from tension that releases sharply at the end of each motion, like a spring snapping forward. Bruce watches the shoulders, then the hips, then the feet. The entire chain. He watches without expression. 5 minutes pass, then 10. The noise in the auditorium grows as more competitors drift inside for the afternoon matches. The hum of conversation rises and falls. Someone drags another row of folding chairs across the floor. A referee laughs loudly near the judges' table. And gradually, more people begin noticing the quiet man near the door, mostly because he hasn't joined any group. He just watches. One competitor approaches him first. Tall, curious, friendly. "You the kung fu guy?" Bruce nods once. "Yes. You gonna show something today?" "A few ideas." The competitor grins. "Karate guys might give you a hard time." Bruce shrugs lightly. "That's okay." The man laughs and returns to his friends. The exchange travels quickly through the room the way small pieces of information always do in competitive spaces. Kung Fu demonstration later. Chinese instructor. Different style. People glance over more frequently now. Some with curiosity, some with quiet skepticism. And eventually the information reaches the center of the room again. Vic hears someone mention the name, Bruce Lee. Vic looks over again. The smaller man is still standing near the chairs, watching, always watching. Vic exhales slowly through his nose. Then he does something small. He walks over, not aggressively, not dramatically, just a champion crossing a room. The conversations around him soften slightly as people notice the movement. Not silence, but attention. Bruce sees him coming long before Vic reaches him. The weight shift in the room gives it away. He turns slightly as Vic stops a few feet away. For a moment, neither man speaks. Vic studies him openly now. Up close, the size difference is even clearer. Bruce is lighter, narrower, compact. Not built like the tournament fighters Vic usually faces. Vic tilts his head. "You teach Kung Fu?" Bruce nods. "Yes." Vic glances at Bruce's hands. Small, relaxed. No tension in the fingers. He smiles faintly. "You ever spar with karate guys?" Sometimes. How'd that go? Bruce thinks for a moment. Different. The answer lands strangely. Not defensive, not competitive, just factual. Vic's smile widens slightly. Behind him, several competitors have drifted closer without pretending otherwise. Rooms like this thrive on comparisons between styles. Karate versus judo, boxing versus karate. Now perhaps karate versus kung fu. One of the referees leans forward in his chair. Vic gestures casually toward the open floor. You want to try something? Bruce looks at the mat, then back at Vic. A pause stretches. And for a brief moment, it appears the story might end right there. Bruce shakes his head slightly. Maybe later. False resolution. The tension releases just enough for several people to chuckle and return to their conversations. Vic nods. No problem. He turns as if the moment is over, but 2 steps away he stops again, because something about Bruce's calm refusal bothers him more than an argument would have. He turns back. What kind of kung fu do you do? Bruce considers the question. Jeet Kune Do. Vic frowns. Never heard of it. Bruce smiles faintly. It's okay. That answer lands differently. A few men behind Vic exchange looks. Vic feels something tighten slightly in his chest. Not anger. Something closer to challenge. He steps back toward Bruce. Show me something. Bruce studies him quietly. What would you like to see? Vic raises his chin slightly. Your fastest punch. A few nearby competitors lean closer. The air shifts again. Bruce asks calmly. You want me to hit you? Vic grins. Yes. Bruce pauses. Another quiet moment settles over the small circle forming around them. Then he says something very simple. Are you sure? Vic nods. Go ahead. And now the room is truly watching. Because something about the way Bruce asked that question made several experienced fighters suddenly unsure about what was about to happen. For a moment, nothing moves. Not the fighters standing around them. Not the referees at the judging table. Not even the low hum of conversation that had been filling the room moments before. Attention gathers the way, air gathers before a storm. Vic Moore stands in front of Bruce Lee with his arms loose at his sides, chin slightly raised, the confident posture of a man who has allowed hundreds of controlled punches to stop an inch from his face without consequence. He expects the same thing now. A demonstration. A fast punch that stops just short of contact. A quick exhibition of speed. Something impressive, but safe. That is the unspoken agreement everyone in the room assumes exists. Bruce Lee stands a few feet away. Still. Observing. The fluorescent lights overhead hum softly. Somewhere in the back of the room, a soda bottle clinks inside the vending machine as its cooling unit cycles on. Bruce studies Vic the way a mechanic studies a machine. Weight distribution, breathing rhythm, eye focus. Vic's stance is relaxed but slightly forward. His center of gravity sits high in the chest rather than the hips. Bruce notices 3 small things. First, Vic expects control. Second, Vic believes he will see the punch coming. Third, Vic believes he can move first if necessary. All 3 assumptions live in his posture. Bruce raises one hand slowly, not into a fighting stance, just shoulder height. Loose. Empty. A few spectators lean closer. Someone whispers behind them, "This should be good." Vic spreads his feet half an inch wider, still smiling. "Go ahead." Bruce looks directly at him. The expression on his face contains no challenge, no anger, just attention. Then he says quietly, "Okay," and for half a second the room waits for something dramatic to happen. A stance change. A wind-up. A visible preparation. None of it happens. Bruce's arm moves, not fast in the way people expect speed to look. No blur. No exaggerated snap. Just a small forward motion. Direct. Efficient. the kind of movement that barely disturbs the air around it. And suddenly, Vic Moore's head jerks backward. A sharp, cracking sound snaps through the room. Not loud, but unmistakable. Bruce's fist has already returned to its resting position by the time Vic processes what happened. For one suspended second, Vic stands exactly where he was, eyes wide, brain catching up. Then his knees soften slightly. Not collapsing, just absorbing the shock that traveled through his jaw and down his spine. The entire exchange took less than 2 seconds. Most people in the room didn't even see the punch land. They only saw the result. Vic touches his jaw slowly. Testing. The room is silent. Not stunned silence. Something heavier. The silence of a group of trained fighters realizing they just witnessed a level of speed none of them fully understood. One of the referees stands halfway out of his chair without realizing he has moved. Someone near the wall mutters quietly, "Did you see that?" Another voice answers, "No." Vic exhales. The grin is gone now. Not replaced by anger. Replaced by something more honest. Recognition. He looks at Bruce. Really looks now. And in that moment, the hierarchy of the room rearranges itself, because Vic Moore has spent years measuring fighters. Speed, timing, distance. He understands exactly what kind of speed it takes to move a fist from rest to contact before the opponent's nervous system even registers the beginning of motion. And he knows he didn't see it. Bruce hasn't moved since. His posture remains relaxed, hands at his sides, as if nothing unusual just happened. Vic nods slowly. The gesture carries respect. "Damn," he says quietly. A few nervous laughs ripple through the crowd. The tension releases slightly. Bruce tilts his head. "You told me to hit you." Vic chuckles once. "I did." He rubs his jaw again, still working the sensation through his mind. "Fast," he adds. Bruce shakes his head lightly. "Not fast." Vic raises an eyebrow. Bruce gestures gently with his hand. "Direct." That single word hangs in the air longer than the punch itself. Direct. The room begins breathing again. Conversations restart in quiet fragments. But the emotional temperature is changed, because every experienced fighter present understands something important just occurred. They didn't watch a trick. They watched efficiency stripped of everything unnecessary. Bruce didn't display power. He removed delay. And the difference between those two things is the difference between performance and reality. Vic looks at him again. The earlier arrogance has dissolved. Not humiliated. Just recalibrated. "You teach that?" Bruce nods. "Yes." Vic grins faintly. "I might need a lesson." Bruce smiles back. "Maybe." And just like that, the confrontation dissolves. No dramatic aftermath, no shouting. Just two fighters recognizing something genuine in the other. But the moment lingers in the room long after the conversation ends. Because what everyone witnessed in those 2 seconds was more than a fast punch. It was a glimpse into an idea Bruce Lee had been quietly refining for years. An idea simple enough to say in one sentence, but difficult enough that most martial artists spend their entire lives circling around it without ever quite reaching the center. Bruce believed fighting should not be complicated. Styles accumulate techniques the way collectors accumulate objects, blocks, counters, combinations, forms, rules, layers of instruction stacked on top of each other until the original purpose becomes buried underneath tradition. Bruce questioned that structure. Constantly. He wrote in his notebooks about it late at night. The idea that the body already knows how to move. That the fastest strike is not the most practiced one. It is the one that travels the shortest distance between intention and action. Like water flowing downhill. No hesitation. No decoration. Just gravity doing what gravity does. That afternoon in Long Beach was not a tournament match. No judges scored the moment. No trophy marked it, but for the men who stood close enough to feel the air shift when Bruce's fist moved, the lesson landed clearly. Speed is not always about moving faster. Sometimes it is about removing everything that slows you down. Doubt. Preparation. The small pauses where the mind asks permission before the body acts. Bruce Lee spent years trying to explain that principle, sometimes with words, sometimes with demonstrations, sometimes with moments exactly like the one Vic Moore experienced that afternoon. A simple request, "Hit me," and the realization, arriving 2 seconds later, that the space between intention and impact can be far smaller than most people imagine. Years afterward, Vic Moore would still remember the feeling. Not pain, not embarrassment, something else. The sensation of standing in front of someone whose understanding of motion operated on a different level entirely. The punch itself lasted less than the blink of an eye, but the idea behind it stayed much longer. Because once a fighter witnesses true efficiency, it becomes difficult to return to unnecessary movement. Difficult to pretend complexity equals mastery. Bruce Lee walked back toward the folding chairs near the entrance a few minutes later. The room gradually returned to its tournament rhythm. Matches resumed. Judges called points. Crowds clapped politely for clean techniques. But something had shifted in the awareness of several fighters present. A quiet question had entered the room. How much of what we practice is actually necessary? Bruce stood near the doors again, watching, observing the matches unfolding across the floor. He looked no different than he had earlier. Same calm posture, same relaxed hands, as if nothing important had occurred. But somewhere inside the minds of the men who had watched that 2-second exchange, a new understanding was taking root. That mastery might not be found in adding more techniques, but in removing everything that prevents a single movement from arriving exactly when it should. Clean, uninterrupted, inevitable, like water finding its way downhill. And once you see motion that pure, it becomes impossible to forget how simple the path can actually be.